Keir Starmer's leadership of the Labour Party for at least the past sort of 7 or 8 months has been characterised by a distinct lack of any real sort of meaningful substantive policy proposals, right? Under Jeremy Corbyn, love him or hate him, there was certainly a lot of policy going around, and Labour's criticisms of the government were usually underpinned by an alternative policy proposal, not just saying don't cut universal credit, but actually saying here's this other more compassionate, more effective welfare system that we would implement, as one example. However, Keir Starmer over the last month has actually been releasing more policies, and it's something that I'm really glad has been happening, because they're actually pretty damn good. So he tweeted this morning, or at least this morning as of when I'm recording this video, £30 billion investment in 400,000 green jobs in the first step of our Green New Deal. Buy, make and sell in the UK to boost supply chains. A Clean Air Act. New net zero and nature test for government policy. That's the start of Labour's ambition on the climate and nature crisis. Where's the Tories? So, that's really good. That is fantastic. I think finally Starmer and his team have realised that they do need to actually have some concrete policy proposals. They need to be showing people this is what we would do if we were in government. That's literally the whole point of opposition. Right? You point out the government's failings and say this is what we would do if we were in government. So, maybe the government should do that or step out of the way at the next election and let us take over. So it's really good to see that a £30 billion investment in 400,000 green jobs is a fantastic policy. We have a huge problem with employment in this country, not necessarily unemployment. Unemployment among young people is a real problem, and Labour has also talked about a policy that they've released sort of recently to implement something called a jobs promise to young people, where if you have a degree, you're guaranteed a job within a year, I think it was, and if you don't have a degree, you get training in whatever field you choose to get into a long-term stable job there. But it's not necessarily always about unemployment. Often it's underemployment or unstable employment. And these 400,000 green jobs, as part of Labour's Green New Deal, are going to be a really important asset to remedying that huge problem that we have. Because now, these people are going to be working in manufacturing, in rewilding efforts. People are going to be working in rebuilding infrastructure. People are going to be working in renewable energy plants, if they're working on a solar farm or a wind farm or anything like that. And those jobs will pay better, and those jobs will last longer. A lot of people, especially sort of my age, I'm 19, a lot of people in my sort of generation are having huge problems with stable employment, but that goes right the way through all of the ages, because the gig economy is really very cutthroat. So that's a great thing to see. Buy, make and sell in the UK to boost supply chains is something I love. It's really interesting because Jeremy Corbyn's Labour actually proposed that after the referendum result, and this was when Corbyn's Labour was obviously was talking about having a soft Brexit, a jobs first Brexit, and a lot of sort of more moderate corporatists, Labour MPs, launched these scathing criticisms of him, saying that he was trying to ape Trump, he was trying to be like Trump, he was trying to, like this whole buy British thing. But they were of course completely wrong. It's a great policy. I think we do need a certain degree of protectionism in our economy, especially when some of the world's leading manufacturers now are countries that are committing egregious human rights violations in many different ways, like China. So buy, make and sell in the UK to boost supply chains is a great policy. It'll improve manufacturing in this country. Again, better quality of employment, more jobs. We used to make stuff in this country. We used to make stuff, but now that is less and less and less. And the companies who do work here, who make things, the technology manufacturers, the companies in industry. I was going to say the countries in industry. Cut that bit out of my mind. That was stupid. Sorry. The companies in industry and things like that, they are very resilient. And if we start, directing government funds towards more of that, I think it would be fabulous for the economy. A Clean Air Act, absolutely brilliant. The Tories just voted against something, and we might do a video on that subject entirely, just focusing on that one thing. But the Tories just voted against a motion that was put forward regarding keeping air pollution levels at a certain level. I think it was by 2030, and I believe it was mandated by the World Health Organization. So the Tories just voted against that, against a clean air, which is kind of strange because it's just such an objectively good thing. But that's what happens when your party's funded by, big polluters, when it's funded by the ultra wealthy who benefit from this pollution of our air and our atmosphere. You vote in terms of what's best for their profits and not the needs of the general population. The next thing, but obviously, that would be absolutely fabulous, especially in a lot of cities like London. Air pollution is a real issue, and it does hurt people and it kills people. So that's a great policy. New net zero and nature test for government policy. I love this. I absolutely love it. So what Labour are suggesting here is that basically before the government does anything, we're getting to a place in the world right now where every little helps. Every little thing that the government does that's positive for the environment, for the natural world, is good, right? And it all adds up. And we need to be very careful with literally everything we do. As individuals, I think that's kind of a silly way to think about it, considering there are 100 companies that are responsible for 70% of global CO2 emissions. So clearly it's not really just individuals' fault. It's not going to get fixed if you reuse plastic bags or turn the lights off. But the government policy is really good. So you have to, basically what Labour is saying, we make sure that everything we're doing has been tested, has been verified, to make sure it's not going to have a significant negative impact on the natural world, on ecosystems, and on our carbon emissions. And that's just, again, that's a great thing. So Starmer says at the end, that's the start of Labour's ambition on the climate and nature crisis. Where's the Tories? So, first of all, that's great messaging. I think there is the concern for me on climate policy that what the Tories are doing is nominally good. So they've even called it a green industrial revolution, which is literally what Corbyn and Labour said in 2019 was their policy. But of course the Tories want to get to net zero only by 2050, and we're still behind that target. Even that inadequate target, we're behind it. The investments they're making in renewable industries, in rewilding efforts, in carbon capture technology, in planting trees, and reducing CO2 emissions are really poor, but it does, when you hear the policies, they kind of sound good on the surface, especially to someone who has a life and doesn't read about these things all the time like I do. So I do worry that if he says, where's the Tories can say, oh well, here's ours. But overall the messaging is good because he's talking about the start of Labour's ambition, which indicates there's going to be more. It's a long-term project to completely re-engineer the way that the economy works, so that it works, in unison with the natural world, rather than at odds with it. And this is a really, really welcome set of policy proposals. It's a really, really welcome shift from Starmer's very sort of technocratic and sort of mundane, very vapid approach thus far. And I think perhaps, I could be wrong, but I think perhaps he might be realising that a lot of people on the right of the Labour Party are just using him to try and destroy the more sort of left-wing or radical tendencies within the Labour Party, so that then they can take over with an even more right-wing candidate, like a sort of Wes Streeting or Rachel Reeves or Jess Phillips kind of character, who are, let's be honest, pretty dreadful politically. And Rachel Reeves is the Shadow Chancellor right now. So she doesn't seem to be, you know, doing that much damage in the way of policy. But I think perhaps Keir's realised, hey, you know, maybe we need to be proposing some stuff. And we do need to get some of the more left-wing tendencies in society back on board, because these are policies that I think almost everyone can get behind, and the Tories will find it difficult to attack. And when the Tories say, well, here's our plan, you said, where's ours, here it is. Well, he can say, well, you're not directing public funds adequately to buy British and make British. You're not creating as much jobs as we're saying we're going to create. You just voted down a Clean Air Act that the World Health Organization had said was a good idea. And you're not, you know, you're implementing all kinds of policies that are obviously damaging the environment and nature. So that has, you know, you're not doing any of those tests like we're going to do. So it's, and I think the methodical way that Starmer does politics can actually work in that regard. So look, this is a good step for Labour, who for the past sort of 8 or 9 months have been very disappointing, I think, and have had a severe lack of policies. So I want you to comment below, and then, you know, what do you think? Because do you think this is actually, you know, this is too little too late? Do you think this is a great policy? Do you think it's bad? Do you think actually, you know, there's more to be done, or this is too reckless for, you know, for economic growth or something? Because I've heard that argument on the right. So yeah, I'm interested to hear your thoughts. But ultimately, I think this is a great step for Labour, and if they keep emphasising these kind of common sense, bold, sort of bread and butter policies within this kind of broader vision of what Labour would like society to be like, and what a Labour government would be like, I think Labour stand a decent chance of actually rebuilding their electoral coalition, and, you know, hopefully beating the Tories in 2024.